as the addition that can make any meal an occasion.
Out of strange little crystal plants.
They're sure to be appreciated offerings your guests when you entertain.
But that's only part of the story.
You know, telephones are funny things.
So let's get that ball rolling.
Well, all right. Paris you want, Paris has got to be.
Hello and welcome to the Truth and Soul podcast, New Zealand advertising podcast. And today we're stretching that just a little bit because I'm talking to Jason Paris, who I originally met when he worked for McDonald's in a marketing role. And since then, he has his career has taken off to the heights of current CEO of Vodafone New Zealand, which is a big job without a doubt. How many employees?
2,000 directly, another 3,000 through partnerships and contractors.
That
big, yeah, a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. So I'm hoping to talk to, well, I'm going to talk to, but hopefully the subjects we'll cover include, how Jason skyrocketed from marketing into the CEO stratosphere of one of New Zealand's biggest companies. And I have a list of listener questions.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
When I was at McDonald's, my title was Adult Marketing Manager, which was the worst job title I've ever had. I had to explain to myself that McDonald's was still family friendly and hadn't diversified.
And that was because it was adults and kids.
Correct.
Now, if we could go back even further to get a bit of background, you come originally from Invercargill.
Very proud Southlander. Still, my mum is down there. She's a meat inspector at Alliance Freezing Works today, hoping to retire when she turns 65 next year. She's had me when she's 17, so she's quite a young mum and young grandmother.
And your father left quite young, is that right?
You didn't know him, actually.
Didn't know him.
I only found my mum kept me in touch with his side of the family, but he never came back, actually, which, I don't know, as a 19-year-old who had a kid, you're going through just different stuff, and he never came back. But he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, and I went to his funeral. I found out about it and paid my respects, and found out there Ngāi Tahu connections, actually, which I'd never known about until a couple of years ago, which was fascinating. So, that's a whole nother story.
So how I mean, it must have affected your early life quite a lot, I guess.
Didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I had very supportive grandparents, an uncle who was amazing. My mum was absolutely incredible. I never, it was state housing, moved quite a lot. Mum had to work she was on the social benefit when I first started, when I grew up. And then she worked and went to the freezing works at quite a young age. But I never found that I missed anything. A lot of love in my family and environment.
Because you had a good support group, far now, wider.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And Mum sacrificed a lot to give me the opportunities. So I never, we didn't have a lot, but I didn't feel like I missed out on anything.
So you must be incredibly close with your mum.
Yeah, very close.
I'm guessing, which is cool. So you went to school down there?
Yeah, all of my kindergarten, my primary school, my intermediate and my high school no longer exist.
Yeah.
Though, which is a shame because I don't have any of that heritage. I have to go drive my children around in Invercargill and go, that was where I was at kindergarten and that was my intermediate, but now it's a Southland Girls High School, and that was Cargill, which was my high school, and now it's a Māori Development Education Centre.
Yeah.
So it's a shame, actually, that none of the schools I went to exist, but it still doesn't take anything away from Southland still being home.
And it was a good place to grow up, Invercargill?
Brilliant. Regional lifestyle was amazing, full of sports, friends, a lot of cards growing up, and
500 poker.
500.
Was that because of the weather? So you had to stay inside?
No, it was, I don't know, it was just the game of choice. I was, brought up playing euchre at a young age. Yeah. That was what my grandparents used to play. And then 500, more of an advanced version of euchre.
Yeah.
So, big card player.
Okay, I'll be forewarned about that. And so how were you at school?
I tried hard. I was always wanting to please my teachers and make mum proud.
Yeah.
Probably up until about fifth form, actually, where
You discovered girls.
got a bit,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of too cool for school type
Yeah.
thing, and made the first 15 at fifth form, so I was quite early, and discovered, you know, beer, girls,
Yeah.
and probably lost my way a little bit in sixth and seventh form from a school perspective. I was also I used to challenge my teachers a lot in asking them how what they were teaching me or us was practically relevant to life outside of school. And most struggled to explain, apart from my economics teacher, actually, and show how that would be practically applicable to the situation in life or developing your career or helping you make a decision.
Yes, I think it's interesting. If you look back at the things that are taught at school, there's a couple of subjects that I really think should be taught at school which aren't, which is one of which is personal finance, and the other which is relationships, which are two massively important parts of anyone's life, and yet you have no education other than hopefully from your parents. And
I agree with you. I know there's another part which, you know, be close to your heart, which is
Fishing.
encouraging fishing. I was going to say creativity. There's a famous, you'd have heard this, and I'm repeating something that everyone already knows, but there is a famous story. I don't even know if it's true, but Tim Finn goes into a class of 5-year-olds and asks them who is an artist, who's a musician, who's a great explorer, and 100% of the 5-year-olds put their hands up. And then he goes to a class of 12-year-olds next door and asks them who's an artist, who's a singer, who's an explorer, and about 3 people put their hand up. So what is it that school does that convinces you that you're no longer creative, that you're no longer musical, that you, I don't know, there's something slightly odd about that where it forces you to conform or into a rhythm of behavior and learning that is structured and everyone should be the same? I don't know.
it would be nice to think that school taught everyone the same. And the way that Picasso would say about pictures, at first you have to learn to paint, and then you can paint in an extraordinary fashion.
Yes.
And with school, once you've got the basics, and I think there could, extended debate about what's the use of various subjects, but once you have them and you have that behind you, then you can go off. I think
that's a good approach, actually. You need to hit the foundation to be able to launch from. I get that.
Yeah. But I think maths gets far more complicated than it is necessary for
at a very early
jobs.
stage. My son's doing his exams, and man, I tell you what, in third form, it's more advanced than I think I was doing in seventh form. Maybe that's reflective of Invercargill, but it was seriously, I'm his maths and science helper, and my wife is his like Spanish and English and etc. And I've got a YouTube to try and find out, the advanced algebra he's doing nowadays.
Why is he learning Spanish?
He's got a Argentinian auntie, and I think he's hoping to go for a gap year in BA.
Yeah. It's in England, everybody learns French, which is kind of handy if you go to France, but not really much use to go anywhere else. With Spanish, you got large number of places to go.
Yeah.
So you left school with reasonable qualifications?
Well, not really. I finished school. I think I got a B.
You left school? Yeah,
I left school. I got a B bursary. I actually applied in seventh form. I applied to go to teachers training college and got declined. Got turned down. I'm not sure why now, because my grades were okay.
Yeah.
And that's actually from a young age I wanted to be a teacher. And
why?
But, I don't know. It was something that I just felt.
It wasn't just falling into a job that so
no,
you had a desire to help people.
Yeah, help.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. But luckily, I was playing rugby at age group level for Southland, and my rugby manager was the manager of Trust Bank Southland. And on the way back from the West Coast on our bus, he said, "Have you ever thought about a career in banking?" And so offered me a kind of a junior opportunity to, apply for a junior role at Trust Bank. And so my first couple of years was in banking, actually, looking at working in tellers and customer services and checkbooks, etc.
Yeah. But you decided banking wasn't for you. It was...
No,
because it was quite limiting, I guess.
Well, no, I when I was on tellers, all these people would come in and getting money out of their bank account, and they were earning a lot more money than I was. And one of those that caught my eye were radio salespeople. I thought that sounded like a pretty cool job, and they were all pretty fun and energetic and creative.
So you did that.
So I went into radio. I went into radio sales. I was a radio salesman for 4ZA in Invercargill. So it was like classic hits and Newstalk ZB and all that in the day.
Yeah.
And then progressively just moved north. Went from radio, and then got a gig after a number of years actually working for Saturn Communications in Wellington, that was my first kind of entry into marketing. They needed someone to sell television advertising in Wellington, but also be the sales and marketing manager. And so that was my first kind of opportunity to do sales and marketing at the same time.
And then you went up to...
Met my wife when I was living in Wellington, and she's an Aucklander. We met in Queenstown in the Millennium 2000, which I think when I met her, I was probably like my minimum, and on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And then...
Wait, you actually met on New Year's Eve?
In 2000, which means it's really good for anniversaries. And when we first met, so I can just go back 21 years.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Auckland to follow her.
And you got a job?
Yeah, so my McDonald's.
How did that come about? Because McDonald's, from my experience, they're very... an extraordinarily focused and professional marketing organisation, which, dare I say it, is quite a rarity in New Zealand, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they're hugely structured and not generally the kind of organisation that takes a flyer.
Yeah, correct.
But somebody spotted that.
So Ian Sutcliffe, who's a really good mate of mine still today, is the marketing director, and he gave me opportunity and genuinely changed my life, I think. And he chose to appoint someone with enthusiasm over ability at that point, I'd say. Yeah,
I think that's very important. Something that I've always lacked either of, but I can say it's important. But you applied for it. You saw it in the paper, or
I think I saw it on Seek or something like that.
Yeah.
And I still can't quite believe I got the gig. Like, I actually have to ask Ian, why the hell did you hire me in the first place? I see him quite a bit, him and his wife Tree. They're amazing supporters of me and my family, especially in times of need when it gets hard and tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gave me my first crack. And as you said, man, what an awesome opportunity. McDonald's is a sales and marketing engine room. It's a machine.
Yeah.
But and as a marketer, so we only had 5 people in the McDonald's marketing team, massive agency support.
Yeah.
So it's you choose your models. Some organisations tend to now insourcing agency into their organisation. McDonald's was very much outsourcing strategy, planning, creativity, etc. So we had about 5 of us, and but you basically owned the P&L. You owned everything from product development to going into a restaurant and making sure that whatever you were developing was going to work in the kitchen, because wastage is a big issue. The time to build those burgers is a big issue. The margin that you generate from the product is a big issue. Then you had to take it to market, price it, design the creative with the agency, design the media plan with the media agency, and then take it to market. So it was really end-to-end accountability. The only thing, your supply chain supported you in terms of buying and negotiating great products. But so it was really...
so Ian taught you all that? Mainly? Or?
Yeah, he did, but he taught it in a way which was... he gave you guardrails that you could work within, which meant that you could, have a real crack yourself and you felt like you owned it, but you couldn't run off the cliff. He'd grab you by the scruff of the neck before you did anything too stupid, and I'd tried to do that a few times.
Yeah.
And then you had just this awesome culture and machine behind it. I went to the first McDonald's Christmas party, everyone is festooned in gold rings for how many years they'd worked there, gold chains. I got big hugs, welcome to the Mick family. It's like being welcomed into the business version of Mafia. You know, it was like this, you are the family kind of thing. So it was really awesome though. I loved it.
Ketchup in the blood.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn so many things, you know, like Ray Kroc, who's the founder of McDonald's, first thing he used to do is go into a toilet. And if the toilet was well maintained and looked after, he generally knew that the rest of the restaurant was high performing, because it's often the last thing that people would get to, because it doesn't make them any money.
Yeah.
It's not normally visible to everyone. So attention to detail, but there's a rhythm and an operational excellence to McDonald's which just works, and that's just why they're such a high performing business.
Yeah, I was at DDB at the time, and there's a large number of staff who worked purely on McDonald's, and as you say, it was like to a certain extent outsourced. It wasn't just creative and strategy. There were people who were 24/7.
Yeah,
and we'll go along to all the McDonald's conferences and the execs where everyone got together. Now, so when you were there, you made some ads.
Mm.
Can you remember them?
Yeah, like I can. One of the products that I helped develop, still on the menu today, the chicken McCheese in some restaurants.
Did you come up with a name? Maybe not, but
yeah, maybe not. I remember a guy that I was working with at the time, James Woodbridge, Hunger Buster, big new thing. We the triple decker. There was the value meal that was like Jason that we did. Was that Jason campaign that was started at that time? Yes, at that time. Yeah, I didn't choose the name Jason, by the way, but it worked, right? I thought that was a great campaign that DDB came up with. It was brilliant.
I can't remember who actually did it within the agency.
I can't
remember any of the creators.
I remember Gavin Sakimoto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still catch up with Gav.
Gav was one of my kind of key offsiders partner. We were both kind of young guns coming through.
Yeah.
Who didn't really know a lot and were finding our way. And
Gav still doesn't.
He was incredible. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it was Gav or not. Who came up with that?
Yeah, could have been. So after you were there for 3 or 4 years,
and then
a while,
and Marty O'Halloran, who was the MD at the time, he was always saying to me, "You're an agency guy."
I think he might have been CEO, but
he was CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the difference between CEO and MD? Have I slighted him?
But yeah, potentially. But I think he'll probably live with it. We were actually talking about this the other night, but generally in New Zealand, with a larger agency group, it tends to be like a group CEO. So he's in charge of everything. So you might have a managing director who is like more in charge of purely DDB advertising, whereas you'd have a group CEO in charge of everything. But
he may have been. I'm not sure, but he was a good ally of mine as well. And he said to me, "You're an agency guy." And so my wife, Rachel, who's far smarter and has much more ability than me, she went to Harvard to do her master's.
Yeah.
So we met in 2000, got engaged 2003.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got engaged, she got a scholarship to go to Harvard Law School to do her master's. So I ended up staying in Auckland, arranging our wedding with my mother-in-law for the year ahead of the wedding. Fun. It was. Well, the good thing is that I didn't really care a lot about any of the detail, so there was no issues in terms of...
So you just said yes?
Whatever.
Yeah.
The only thing I said is I wanted Spates as one of the beer selections, which was good.
Yeah.
And I wanted a chocolate cake versus a fruit cake for the wedding cake, because I believe that no one eats the fruit cake. Everyone just, it's all that flesh
That's
stuff.
a crucial error. Fruit cake all the way.
No, chocolate cake for me.
Yeah.
And so that very little else. And then
Spates and chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. They were my only two requirements.
People. Yeah.
And then Rach graduated from Harvard, first in her class, Masters of Law, got her dissertation published in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Like, she'll hate me saying that, by the way, because she's very modest. But
I feel very guilty for not having her on.
You should. She is she's much better value than me. And then when you graduate from Harvard, the normal path is London or New York.
Yeah.
And New York was an awesome job. We would like you to work 365 days a year. You get 2 weeks holiday, but we encourage you not to take them. And then London, which is the path that Kiwis normally take, and a lot of our friends were there. So we went to London, and Marty said to me, have a crack at agency side, and he lined me up a job at DDB London.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. Which was short-lived because I hated agency side. I loved everything about it apart from the clients.
That's quite a mission. So that was BNP, DDB.
It was just DDB London then.
Well, it was BNP that became.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I'm talking to the one of our two listeners who might be old school London. When I grew up, it was BNP, but it was a pretty good agency. So who was there then?
Phenomenal agency, actually, and it was all anchored in strategic planning. That was what it was known for.
Yeah.
You know,
so the home of planning.
The home of insight. And, the MD, well, see, I'm not sure which one.
Yeah.
But they were moving through them quite quickly, actually. I think his name was Paul, but I was so far down the layers, right? I think I was an account director.
Really?
So I wasn't a group account director.
But the account director is it's not.
It's good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I was an account director on Dell.
Okay.
And I remember...
Not the choice account.
Like when you've got Volkswagen.
Yeah.
So I remember they just won Dell before I started, and there was a guy called Kip Kesey who passed away now. He was an American, phenomenal guy. He was head of Europe, Middle East and Africa, I think at the time. Anyway, he said to me, he's a real character, just such a good guy. He said to me, Jason, I'm not going to try an American accent. He said to me, Jason, I'm putting you on Dell. I'm going to be honest with you because no one else will do it. And when I called up, and I'm apologising to anyone who works for Dell who's listening, and I called up and said, we've just won Dell. What's your advice? And they said, quickly run up to the top of the building and throw yourself off.
Okay.
So I had the job of going to the creative teams and saying, can I just fit one more PC into the ad, please? That was basically my entire life.
Yeah.
So, while everyone else was working on Emirates or, Volkswagen.
The sexy stuff.
The sexy stuff. Here I was doing retail, which really had it was just churning out ads.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I saw the brilliance of an agency, right? The eclectic mix of creativity and smarts. The culture was amazing. Work hard, play hard. Yeah, the dynamics between the suits and the planners and the creatives and the production teams, etc. But I really struggled with stupid clients, and I really struggled with not being close enough to the outcome.
Yeah.
So I never really felt like I owned the business outcome. And so it was an awesome time for me. I really enjoyed my time in agency. I think it made me a better partner of agencies because I could see what a bad client looked like.
Yep.
But I knew I didn't want to be agency side from that point in time, and I wanted to be on client side. And then I went to Nokia actually, and got a gig there.
Just going back to DDB, who were the creative directors there then? Was it?
This
Jeremy
was,
Cragen?
Yes.
Yeah, Ewan Patterson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like legends.
Yeah. No,
but this was like
wankers. Hi guys.
This is like 17 years ago now.
Yeah.
16, 17 years ago. So a long time. And as I said, I remember bumping into them both actually, and they're very nice people.
Yeah.
But like, what's the point of getting them to think about how do you fit the 19th computer into a full page ad? There's not a lot of point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see. I still catch up with them from time to time because we had caught up with them. I used to work with Ewan at Y&R, and then Jeremy and Ewan and I were all at a DDB Creative Directors Conference in Chicago at the same time, which all went very wrong. We'll save that for off air.
I remember one of the things that stuck in my memory is they were pitching for a business and for the whatever the entity is that runs the trains in London or England.
Crikey. Yeah. British Rail.
British Rail.
Yeah.
And they were pitching, and the idea they came up with to win the pitch was really creative, but it wasn't anything to do with an ad. It was to show that they got the customer. And what happened is they'd made it through to the final pitch, and they had the decision makers coming in to make a call between two agencies. And they came in and they were in reception, and the appointment was for 9 o'clock. And no one met them. The receptionist kind of went, sit there, didn't say anything. 9:05, 9:10, 9:15, 9:20, and they were getting really pissy. And at 9:23, they came out and said, now you know how your customers feel. So it doesn't matter how many ads we run, no one's going to feel great if your trains are inefficient and making people late to moments that matter for them in terms of business meetings or family events. Like, I thought that was bold and brave, putting the customers to the edge, but actually what a demonstration of really getting to the heart of the matter of how they're going to win hearts and minds. I thought it was great.
It is very bold and very brave, but I must confess, I'm pretty sure it wasn't DDB. And that.
Oh, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's quite a legendary
Is it?
London advertising story, and it was.
I got told about that story while I was there, so maybe someone was taking credit for it.
Yeah, it was probably about 10 years before that.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so it's
well, see,
well
there you
known.
go. There's masters of. Everyone thinks it's their own idea, which shows it's a good one.
Yeah, if those two tried to pass it off as their own, they're
Someone
even
did.
worse than I thought.
Someone
Yeah.
did at DDB London.
Yeah. Or maybe they were copying the old one. So that must have been. You've done that. You've seen a really good agency from the inside, and you went over to Nokia.
Yeah.
Yeah, who have fallen on hard times recently, but at the time were probably
45% market share.
Yeah.
Too big to fail, I think, was the Time magazine front page.
Yeah.
This was 2007, actually.
yeah,
It was amazing. I loved it. Fins are great. Awesome karaoke.
yeah. Oh, well, I think if you went there in the summer, you'd have a good time. You went there in midwinter.
Well, that's why they have to have ultraviolet ray lights, because it's so depressing in the winter. And that's why they have to drink lots of beer and go to karaoke.
Well, I believe that Finns are the happiest nation in the world.
Yeah, we must be up
One
there
of those.
now,
We're up there. Yeah, I bring it down a bit, but I think. Yeah, I think we're top 5 or something. Finland the Scandi countries tend to do really well. So you got over there a bit. You got to see a bit of Finland.
Yeah, it was like I remember. I remember actually showing, my lack of elegance in understanding modern society. My first time I went to Finland, I was meeting Jan, who was my liaison to show me around the head office. And it was this massive cafeteria area, and there was a guy sitting over in the corner and no one else there. I'm wandering around for about 5 minutes looking for Jan. And then I said, "Oh, excuse me, do you know anyone called Jan?" He said, "Jan, nice to meet you."
Cringe.
Wasn't the best first impression I could have made.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But other than that, it was a good time.
Amazing. Yeah, again, very marketing-led organisation, but did a couple of things wrong. One, in the face of competition, pivoted away from their core, which was simplicity and ease of use. So introduced a completely new operating system, so Series 6 onto Series 4. And so you had two different operating systems. It would be like going, okay, Android and iOS. And so depending on what phone you bought, it had a different operating system on it. That was one. And then secondly, missed the trend that a phone was becoming more than a phone. It was becoming a life remote, right? It was about music. It was about fashion. It was about entertainment. It was about, just managing your life. And so Motorola came in with great design, and Sony came in with music, and Samsung came in at a price and simplicity level, and kind of left Nokia really struggling, actually. And it's a really real disappointment. I left, I was, again, I was marketing director of the UK when I left, but a lot of the brand work was done out of, globally and et cetera. So
Again,
I just had to execute.
that's a big job.
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. It was like a phenomenal job, and big budgets, and did amazing things, and music concerts, and great customer relationship management programs. And
who was your agency then?
Haygarth,
I
out of
them.
they were in Wimbledon. Great agency, actually. We were their number one client.
Yeah.
Stephen Haygarth, the owner there, they were very data, probably ahead of their times, very data and customer relationship management driven, very focused on activation and experience driven.
So that was your first experience of the tech world, which I'm guessing would prove useful in years to come. Did you join as marketing director or did
Marketing
you
manager? Yeah, marketing manager and then marketing director and then left.
Yeah. And where were you living in London?
So I started when we first got there. We lived in Notting Hill in a one-bedroom flat where our washing machine and dryer was in our bedroom. But
Nice.
great location.
Yeah.
And then moved to Fulham for a two-bedroom flat where I'm now I was a Man U supporter from 3. I know. I'm sorry. Apologise in advance. So not just because they were good, but because I was 3 years old. So this was before they were good. But also I've got a real soft spot for Fulham now as well. And so they are struggling this year, which we always do. And looks like we're probably going to get relegated, which is unfortunate. But that's the joy of supporting a team like Fulham is that you're always...
You're swapping divisions?
You are.
So are they in the Premier League or in the Championship?
Yeah, they're in the Premier League. They're third. They've got, I think, about 4 points to Brighton. And
third from the bottom?
Third from bottom. So they're in the relegation zone.
Yeah. And the nearest club to Fulham is...
Chelsea, actually.
Chelsea. And the nearest club from that is QPR.
Ah, is it yours?
That's my team,
is
QPR.
It?
So
there you go.
Yeah.
How are they going?
Terrible. They're like mid-table in the Championship.
Oh, no.
I used to have a season ticket, and football in London, as you've experienced, is maybe not as mental as it is in Argentina or Spain or Italy, but it's pretty all-pervasive. New Zealand is supposed to be a rugby-mad country, yet in the days when I did go to work in the morning, no one ever really talked about rugby. No one talked about the Super Rugby, that the All Blacks might get a mention if they won, but it's just not as all-pervasive as football is to London.
No, you're right. No, you're right.
I get in trouble with some Kiwis for saying that.
No. I think you're 100%
right. So you went from Nokia to...
TVNZ back home.
So did you have that lined up before you... No?
Yeah, So I got headhunted actually for that. I got a phone call. Actually, every job since then I haven't applied for. I've applied for because I've had to interview for it, but I've never actually applied for. I've always been called by the company, and so I got a call and did some interviews. And
had you already decided to come back?
No. My wife and I got drunk in the Cotswolds on New Year's Eve and decided that we were going to take the job and go. So we called our family up and said, because the job offer came through, and we're like, well, it's probably 2 years earlier than we thought it would be. But jobs, great jobs at great companies, few and far between.
Yes.
Yeah, so I came back, started TVNZ.
Because they wouldn't have been aware of that much of what you're up to in Europe. So
not until the interview process.
Yeah.
And
that was over Skype, was it? Or
whatever the version of it was then. I'm not sure. It was a video conferencing unit. It wasn't over a PC. I had to keep on going to a kind of a hired studio to do a series of 4 interviews. And then my boss, but like Ian, I've actually been quite lucky. I've had all these people who just want to take a punt on me. Yeah. Put me in roles beyond my ability, but smack bang in my enthusiasm, sweet spot. And Rick Ellis was the CEO of TVNZ when I was there. And again, a good mate and mentor of mine. And Rick brought me in as head of marketing, digital and strategy. So I was on the exec team there. Probably one of my proudest things in my entire career was coming up with and launching TVNZ On Demand when I was there. Yep, which is still going and still going strong. Personally, I never watch live TV. I watch everything on demand, and I'm guessing I'm fairly typical. Yeah, certainly of an urban New Zealander in that respect. That tradition of kind of turning on to watch the 6 o'clock news and then spending the rest of the evening switching between TV1 and TV2 probably doesn't happen. No, but this is quite advanced. This is quite advanced for its time, right? Because this is 15 years ago. Yeah. And so the team and I we were working on this and we were going, actually, people want to be their own programmers.
Yeah.
They don't want to be dictated to when they have to watch something at what time, and people have got busy lives. So we developed this concept of the strategy was inspiring New Zealanders on every screen and distributing our content far and wide, much to the resistance of the television team at TVNZ at the time, because they were like, this is going to destroy the core television business, spreading your content across more platforms. All it will do is we'll lose control. It won't be additive, it'll be negative. And so it was a massive internal turmoil on it. And also at the time, to be fair, we didn't know what the business model would be. I was genuinely Googling like Channel 4 and going, what are they doing? And looking looking at ABC in the US and what are they doing? And what's Channel 7 doing in Australia? And no one had a similar model. Some were doing ad-supported or pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And so we didn't think that we were sophisticated enough to look at subscription, so we looked at ad-supported and pay-per-view, and we chose Shortland Street as the test case. So we released Shortland Street episodes a day before they went to TV for $2. And then we tried it on ad-supported, and ad-supported was 15,000 times more successful than pay-per-view at that point in time.
Yeah, I can understand that. So what gave you the confidence to go into the rest of the organisation to go, if we do this, they will come?
It was two things. What's the worst that can happen?
It doesn't often work with boards.
But I'm just saying, you have a crack. But it's also what customers were saying they wanted. They wanted more control.
So it was
excuse me.
Customer research, just going out and...
Yeah, we're just talking to customers and saying, and if people are going, it really pisses me off that I get home at 6:10.
I've missed it.
And I've missed the first lot of the news.
So Sky by then were doing, already had that.
They had that in the technology.
Yeah, they had you could delay it and you could record it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not everyone had Sky.
No, absolutely not. But you could look at Sky, and to a certain extent,
you had to record it and then you could watch it. They didn't have you could go along all your EPG and just to choose what you wanted. If you hadn't recorded it yourself, then you were stuffed.
But it was taking what Sky had and going a whole lot further.
But it was complicated because we had to renegotiate rights for multiple platforms, not just the TV platform, and the television team, although resistant to it, supported it and negotiated the rights, and the rest is history. And I reckon, TVNZ On Demand is now the anchor of TVNZ, in my opinion. It's the most important platform they've got. And it's developed, significantly since I was there. And they're doing a great job. I do wonder, it was way before Netflix. We knew what we were doing way back then. We probably just weren't thinking big enough. Could have been the Netflix of New Zealand, to be honest, if we had a crack. I'm not saying it could have been the Netflix of the world, but we potentially could have done what Trade Me did in New Zealand and got a real stranglehold in terms of an entertainment subscription platform.
But I would have thought that if Netflix could be bothered to launch here, then they have the content. Now they do, and also the investment behind it. So a lot of the Netflix's success is the investment they make in their own content now, versus having to rely on licensing it from other parties. And the Netflix spend a lot of focus on using their platform as research. Yes. Of finding exactly what people are watching, when they're watching, how they're doing it. And it's a data business. Were you able to do that with
we weren't that sophisticated.
Yeah.
So, you'd have basic recommendation engines.
Yeah.
If you like comedy, you might like this other comedy.
Yeah.
But, again, this is 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. So it's a long time ago now.
And that's
the team did a great job.
One of your proudest moments?
Without a doubt. I think proud because it was embracing a trend well ahead of its time, but it was right. Proud because it was a really difficult thing to get through the organisation, and you had to really convince people of the vision.
Did you have Rick Ellis on your side?
Yeah, that really helped.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, if your boss is against it, you're pretty much stuffed.
Yeah.
But he was a big backer.
Yeah.
Of it as well. Yeah.
So that was great. And then you went on to,
MediaWorks.
yeah.
That wasn't so successful.
Yeah.
So that was 18 months.
Was that CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the thing that drew me in, wow, I think I might have been, I don't know, 33. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Going to be CEO of a television company? And then I didn't really think through, but I just bought this for a multiple of 17, and it's owned by private equity that might not have the money to invest in the content, and it might just be about reducing costs and not really caring about the creativity and the culture of the organisation.
Yeah.
So, best and worst career decision I've made. I grew up really quickly in 18 months because I got exposed to private equity ownership and how you have to really focus on how your numbers are your friend. You hit your numbers, it creates a lot of freedom in an organisation. If you don't, you have a lot of problems. So I learned that. I learned how to run a business really efficiently. So amazing culture. Like, the constraint that we were under made us think differently and do things in a much better way. Like, we would turn up to Waitangi and TVNZ would have 3 big vans and camera crews and 10 reporters, and we would have 1 camera, 1 cameraman and a reporter, and when you watch the 6 o'clock news that night, you couldn't tell the difference. Yeah. And we would be high-fiving and having pizza back in the newsroom going, like, nothing to do with me. It was all to do with the team. But it was a really, it created a dynamic in that team, which was amazing. Mark Jennings was the head of news, an incredible person. You had people like, Mike McRoberts and John and Hillary and those guys. It was a real, it's impossible to describe the culture at the time. When you feel like you're under attack and being constrained, but you're in it together, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, I did play a significant role in that I presented an advertising segment on, what was the morning show called, with Oliver Driver? And
AM
was that after
or?
your time? Oh, it's called Sunrise or something.
Sunrise, yeah.
Yeah. I think that actually caused the demise of TV3 as a whole. It's never been the same since, but it was a bit of fun. So 18 months, a lot of learning, because you don't, what's the phrase? A smooth sea does not a sailor make.
Yeah, correct.
Right? It's got to have.
Yeah, I just, I made that call because I got attracted to the CEO title. Yeah. And I downplayed the substance of the decision. So it was the best career call and worst career call.
Yeah,
at the same time.
Because you went a bit early, or you made the wrong.
Wasn't ready for it. Yeah. It was the wrong choice going into a business which probably didn't have the means to back a bold strategy.
Private equity is not always the easiest bedfellow, from my experience.
No, definitely not. But I've got private equity owners now, and they're awesome.
Of course, these ones are.
Well, and I promise you, in 10 years' time, on the next podcast, I'm not going to be saying I was lying to you then. But they are genuinely great. They are backing a strategy. It's a business that has been underinvested in for 5 to 10 years, and now we're making the right investments, which is great.
We'll just have a quick pause there, because I see. Would you like another?
Yeah, that'd be great.
You're listening to Truth
and Soul,
the New Zealand Advertising Podcast.
So after
MediaWorks,
you went to
Telecom at the time.
Yeah, which later became Spark. So Simon Mutter,
yes, was my CEO.
CEO there, yeah.
Yeah. So I got brought in by a guy called Alan Gordy, who was running the consumer and SME division as chief marketing officer.
Yeah.
So I came in as CMO. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then did the Telecom to Spark change.
So in terms of agency, just getting a little slice of advertising back in there. So you're working with Saatchi's? Yeah.
Yeah. Nikki was the MD.
Nikki Bell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's amazing.
And who was running it creatively?
Well, Corey was the...
Yeah, Corey Chalmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Corey was my kind of main creative partner.
Yeah. And did you get any good ads out?
Loads.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Like, actually, one of my favourite that we did when I was there is everyone else's least favourite, which is Giganeer. Really pissed a lot of people off, but I loved it because it was so unlike telecom. It was a rap song about unlimited broadband.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Well, that's a sign of good advertising, right? Even if you love it or hate it, it got cut through.
I
Hated it?
No. At the time, I thought whatever Spark did was high profile and had a lot of money behind it.
So this was telecom.
Okay, well,
whatever. Yeah,
the largest telco in New Zealand was high profile and expensive, and people would have an opinion on it, and often go, I hate the new ad, but after a while go, oh, actually, it's growing on me a bit. No, I thought it was memorable and had cut through and got the point across well. Yeah,
like I'd love to say that my favourite ad I did at Telecom was Father and Son.
Yeah.
Because, holy crap. The holy grail of advertising type stuff. And there was a lot of pressure on the marketing and agency, and KR's a pretty big force.
That's Kevin Roberts, folks.
Kevin Roberts, yeah. And so, you have the weight of history and iconic creative advertising, some of the best, Spot.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, I'm really, really proud of the partnership. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing in that the creatives are continually hopefully producing ads throughout the year. So if one comes out that isn't particularly loved or successful, they can brush it under the carpet and go, well, we've done all these other ones. Whereas if you're the client and you're only producing ads for one brand, if you like, to have something fall over is potentially disastrous, and you can end up making some lot of excuses to the board and end up losing your job. So
the Pink Fist Telecom.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the previous CMO before I started.
Of course it was. Yes.
Who's also a good mate of mine, Kieran Cooney.
Yeah.
He was the marketing director, chief customer officer at Foxtel until recently, and he's now just joined the Vodafone TPG merger in Australia. He's a great creative leader.
I don't know him, and I remember when that happened, it seemed a bit unfair. It was like blood in the water, and people were coming up with opinions.
That the disappointing thing was it was blood in the water internally at Telecom.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, reflective of the culture at the time. It wasn't blood, like the insight, which I wasn't part of it, but I would imagine that the insight was how much these sports people are giving up and sacrificing to get an outcome, win a Rugby World Cup. Can you create a movement by getting New Zealanders to give up or sacrifice something that's important to them?
Yeah.
I'm not. Yes, and I suppose they've gone to. We've got a spectrum of things you can give up, New Zealand, and let's go to the extreme. Well, maybe one of the extremes, and so that's how that played out. But I think you're right. Blood in the water. But the worst thing for me is I think the blood in the water was from within the organisation.
In case, listener, you're not entirely familiar with the story, there was a campaign around the World Cup, which was the idea being that
abstain for the game,
so don't have sex, and it was released. It was I doubt it. I don't know. I doubt it was leaked, but it came out before it went to air, and it went straight to the press, and the press leapt on it and went, because they're just looking for a story, and more interesting to the press than here's an ad that we love, isn't it great? It's more interesting to go, oh my God, what have these guys done?
Sean Fitzpatrick is driving a car with a pink fist on the front of it.
Yeah. And it's right, there was a legal inquiry into how it got leaked.
Yeah.
Because I think I got rung up about that by, I can't remember if it was a lawyer or somebody, someone would have had my email who was thought of as maybe had done it, and therefore I'm sure they rang out hundreds of people, and had anything to do with me, which it absolutely didn't. But
Yeah, I guess, I wasn't that close to it. I just thought it was maybe reflective of the culture at the time.
yeah,
Definitely wasn't what I experienced in the culture when I was there under Simon.
yeah,
But
they're but for the grace of God.
correct.
So it was a good time overall, and learning a lot, and you enjoyed the tech side.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Nokia loved it. There's a little story on this one, actually. So, when I went from DDB to Nokia, because I'd been working at McDonald's, when I decided to move to client side, I had two job opportunities came up. One was the marketing director of KFC,
Yeah,
which was paying £60,000 a year, and one was marketing manager of Nokia, which was paying £40,000 a year. And I really liked the idea of technology, but I was like, it's £20,000. It's a lot of money, And so my wife gave me some great advice at the time. She said, what's the ultimate job that you would want that if you got, you would die a happy man?
yeah,
And I said at the time, Chief Marketing Officer of Telecom, because it was this iconic New Zealand brand.
Yeah.
And, I thought, wow, the advertising they did was brilliant, and I'd really enjoyed marketing. And she said, well, which role do you think would get me there? And I was, well, actually, KFC's, it's a retailer and rhythm and et cetera, and fires out lots of ads, but Nokia is technology. Not sure. So I called the telecom head office reception area
yeah.
and said, can I speak to the chief marketing officer, please? And they put me through to Kevin Kendrick, who was the chief marketing officer at the time, who's now the CEO of TVNZ.
Yeah.
And Kevin answered the phone. And I said, hello, I'm calling you from London. You don't know me. We've never met. I really need some career advice. Have you got a minute? And he listened to my story and he said to me, Nokia without a doubt. If you want my job, take the Nokia role. And so I did.
That is a great story for two reasons. One is that he actually answered the phone and did it, and that the number of times that if you want to speak to someone, they will speak to you if you do it in a deferential way. The other one is, I think, strategically, I don't know if that's the right word, but within your life, if you are faced with a crossroads and you don't know which to do, work out what your end goal is.
Correct.
And once you've worked out what the end goal is, go, well, which one of these is going to bring me closer to that?
It was from my wife, gave me that advice.
Yeah.
It's bang on, I think.
She seems to have been quite a strong influence throughout your career.
My mum, my wife, and now my daughter, very strong influences on me.
Strong ladies.
Yeah, very strong woman. And my grandmother.
Yeah. Okay, we see a pattern emerging.
There you go.
And from there, you got a phone call going, oh, hey, why don't you come over to Vodafone?
Yeah, it was hard actually, because I'd been at Spark for 7 or 8 years and I get bored. My personal view on career is that if you're in a job for more than 2 years, you're starting to plateau. So I think the first year of a role, you're giving, the organisation's normally giving you more. So you're learning. You're learning.
Yeah.
Second year, it's about even. Year 3, you're probably giving them more. And then it's when you need to find the next opportunity to lift again. And I was really privileged at Telecom to Spark. I had the chief marketing officer, and then I was given a broader commercial remit as a GM. And then Simon made me the CEO of half the business.
Yeah.
The MD CEO, he was managing director, I was CEO, etc. There you go. And so CEO of half the business. And, when you're there for a long time, and I believed in it and did it my teams did some amazing things in the Telecom to Spark. Didn't really feel like it was in your DNA. I mentioned before that my wife and I thought we'd come back from London a little bit earlier than we wanted to.
Yeah.
Our kids were young, or still are quite young. And we thought, well, should we go overseas again before Sam hits high school? Because everyone we've talked to said you have to have your kids settled before they get into third form, or year 9, I think it's called now. And Vodafone called. So they have a list of people in different markets who are a pain in the ass, who are doing stuff that's making it difficult for them to succeed. And every now and then they have a conversation with them about whether they'd like to come and work for them. So they called me up.
Interesting strategy.
Yeah, and said, look, we'd like to meet with you. They flew me to Hong Kong.
So this is Vodafone Global.
Mm.
Yeah.
flew me to Hong Kong. So
So if I can ask, well, you don't have to answer, but how does that go with Spark? And you go, oh, I'm just off to Hong Kong for...
Didn't tell them.
Oh, they
I was away for 48 hours.
But New Zealand is so small. You'd run
Get a
into someone
plane
on the
and-
flight, and
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't run into anyone.
happen.
Maybe
All right. No.
I could. I didn't. I don't know. Maybe I had a story. I was going to an Ericsson conference, or something. I'm not sure. But Simon knew that I'd been there for a while, and what was next, and I was getting itchy feet, and felt like I'd accomplished a lot. And
Because the only other job would have been his. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he's probably quite happy to see the back of you. But
No. He was much. Yeah. I was no threat.
yeah.
So met with them, and then long story short, they said, "Hey, we really like you. Come and do a job in London for us, and come over for a few years."
Yeah.
Russell Stanners, who was the CEO of Vodafone, had been there for 13 years at that point in time. We're looking at doing an IPO, and he'll settle the IPO, and no guarantees, but maybe you can come back. And I wasn't sure about coming back to Vodafone because I was like, I don't want to jump across straight away. I feel like you're going from Fulham to Queen's Park Rangers.
Yeah.
And how does that go down? I don't know. So, but it was much easier for me to go to Europe.
Yeah, because one of the questions actually had was specifically about this. Thank you, Mike. Which was, did you spend that time with Vodafone in London? Was it kind of gardening leave?
No, they worked me, man. Like
But did you have to do it because you couldn't go straight to Vodafone here because of your restraint of trade?
So yes, but the first intention was I was going across there for 3 or 4 years, and we were going to come back to New Zealand no matter what when Sam was going to third form, with no guarantees of coming back. But I was kind of relatively okay with that, and I thought I'd find a job at some point in time. And what a life experience, working for Vodafone in Europe. So we'd rented the house out, sold the cars. Rach was a partner at Bell Gully. She'd resigned from her job. The dogs were going on the plane. Had a massive leaving party, all sorted. The kids the kids were enrolled at the Herodian school in London. Yeah, and they had to do tests in 4 different schools to get into different things, etc. So we put them through a lot of stuff, and to make our life in London. The day of our leaving party, so it was 10 days before we were about to go, I got a phone call from Vittorio Kalau, who was the group CEO at the time. He called me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. It was a 5-minute conversation. It was, Jason, Russell has decided to leave because the IPO is not going ahead. Congratulations, you're now CEO of New Zealand. So I had to go down and say to Rach, it wasn't even a, would you like to? It was, you are, this is what's happening. But we know you've got a restraint of trade for 6 months. You can't operate in New Zealand and Australia. Come across to Europe. We will, bring you up to speed on all things Vodafone. Leave your family in New Zealand. I was like, well, I'm not going to leave my family in New Zealand.
Quite like them.
Yeah, quite like them. And you come across. So long story short, we had a fake leaving party, fake speeches, farewell for years. Only Rach and I knew that we were not going for years. Couldn't tell the kids because, of course, they'd leak it. And then we got to London.
Does it make a difference to that age, like 6 months, 4 years?
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And as when we got there, we said, hey, kids, you're only here for 6 months. You're not going to school anymore. You're just on holiday. They were like, hooray. And Rach and the kids travelled around Europe, and I travelled around all the different Vodafone markets. So I went to 13 different markets in 6 months. So, Germany, Italy, India, South Africa.
What happened when you got there?
They made up a fake role for me. I was director of convergence, and everyone was like, well, that's a bloody made up job. What are you really doing? And I said, I'm director of convergence. What does that mean? Converging. Yeah. But really, I was just going around all these different Vodafone markets, meeting with their executive team and getting a download on their strategy, the competitive dynamics, technology, what was happening. They're amazing, very generous, helping me create my strategic plan for Vodafone New Zealand for when I came back home.
So presumably it must be a great help to have Vodafone as a global organisation because you have all that learning.
It's amazing
from it.
Like COVID hit Italy first. I could call up the CEO of Vodafone Italy, Aldo,
Yeah.
and say, hey, mate, you're 45 days ahead of me. What are you seeing? What are you doing? My CFO could talk to their CFO. And that meant, like, even in COVID, we started to do, and everyone thought we were mad. We forced everyone we shut down the office.
Yeah.
Even before COVID had hit New Zealand. And everyone 100% of people had to work from home to test out our video conferencing, the licenses, the load. Have you got the right setup at home? You know, what other technology do you need? What happens with office chairs? Do we need to get them out, or big screens, etc.? What's the process for people? You send an email out to your teams and people come into work. If they try and get in, like, what's the process for saying, sorry, you can't come in? If they need to get something, you know, anyway, all that kind of stuff. But that was on COVID, but on everything, you know, roaming or 5G rollout or customer relationship management. Like, it's a phenomenal ability to go to 26 different markets and try and pull best in class from them, what works well and what doesn't.
Definitely, particularly when your main rivals, only rivals, don't have that ability. Because with advertising agencies, you kind of have that.
You do,
all the way around, and you can pick up stuff, but it's obviously not as sophisticated as the tech.
No,
in terms of learnings,
it's still less about tech and more about relationships, though. You still can't beat, having been out in the town with someone and had a few beers.
No,
and
absolutely.
Having that relationship where you can call them up and say, I'm in a bit of trouble here. What do you reckon?
But if there's a new bit of tech that is going to come down to New Zealand, if it's already been launched in Ireland,
of course,
you can find out exactly.
Well, and also you can talk to your customers and say, hey, this is not bleeding edge technology. It's proven technology. It's been rolled out in market A, market B, market C. These companies are already using it. You don't need to be worried about it.
How is Vodafone New Zealand viewed in the Vodafone world? As smaller, insignificant, or leading edge, or nice guys?
Differently now that it's gone through. It's morphed through different phases. So I think when Vodafone first launched in New Zealand, it was seen as a innovator and market leader. It was seen as breaking new ground, trying new things, and often seen as the creative and technology hotspot.
Do you test things? Vodafone test things down here?
Historically had, right?
Because McDonald's used to do that a bit.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then Vodafone Group, it went through I think a more difficult stage where Vodafone Group decided that it wanted to consolidate its focus into Europe and Africa and wanted to get out of India, Australia and New Zealand. And so that's when the Sky merger came up, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
They looked at doing a trade sale and flicking it to someone else, didn't happen. Looked at doing an IPO, which was the kind of the last part that didn't happen. And that went over for a period of 5 or 7 years. And when you juice up a business for sale, you generally reduce investment because you want to increase the bottom line to get your highest...
Reduce investment and costs.
Cost.
Yeah.
To get your highest exit price, right?
Yeah.
You can do that for a year, but Vodafone New Zealand had been doing that for 7 years. And so when I joined the organisation, I found a company that had all of the strategic intent with none of the backing.
Yeah.
All the stuff that Vodafone New Zealand wanted to do and that was within its DNA of the challenger, the innovator, that it had been created, the foundation had been created on, had been, the computer just kept on saying no at Vodafone Group because it was trying to optimise its exit price.
Yeah.
Which is why the ownership change was a game changer for our business, because we could develop a bold strategy but know that we've got owners that are going to fund it.
Yeah.
Versus developing a bold strategy and know that you've got owners that are going to say no. So 5G leadership or IT modernisation or launching super Wi-Fi or, launching into more sophisticated ICT offerings or changing the structure and bringing in new capability. All of those types of things had previously been off the table for Russell and the team. But I can see the intent because I can look at the previous PowerPoint presentations. I can genuinely just change 2011 to 2021 and do some of the stuff that he and the team wanted to do, but 10 years later.
I just want to go back for a second.
Yeah.
To the more human element of you sitting at home and getting that phone call from a personal point of view. You've got all these plans. You've got the family organised, and a phone call like that, what was your initial thought?
Holy
Fuck.
shit.
Sorry,
What am I going to say to
politely,
Rach?
Yeah. But you didn't, at no point did you go, well, I don't know that I want to do it. You went, was there a moment's hesitation, or was it, right, okay, this is what's happening?
No, so the two people I spoke to, I don't think I've told this to anyone actually. First person was Rach, my wife.
Yeah.
The other person is, I got the call at 7 a.m. I was at Simon Moosh's house at 10 a.m. So my boss, who I'd already resigned to go to Vodafone Group. And I said to him, this has happened. Can I have a chat to you about it? And he said to me, don't do it. And it wasn't don't do it because he didn't want me to be a competitor. He said to me, don't do it. You're too good for the telco industry. You're a growth guy, and the telco industry is about hard yards of cost efficiency and, tight management, whereas you are an innovator. You are more suited to a growth entrepreneurial area. He's probably right, but the thing that drew me to it, was first of all my wife going, that's awesome. Like, how cool is it we're going to get to go to Europe for 6 months and then come back to the greatest country in the world, New Zealand, A. And then B, my driver has always been about doing something incredible for New Zealand. I, first and foremost, passionate New Zealander and passionate Southlander. And
I thought it was the other way round, but
could
close.
be.
Yeah.
And what Rach said to me is, you've got this organisation that you think has probably been underperforming for whatever reasons, for a number of years. What an incredible opportunity to use technology to change the country. And that's what helped me move from Fulham to QPR more effortlessly, was actually the reason that I thought, shit, what a privileged position to be leading an organisation like this at a time like this that enables, I know it sounds a bit,
If it's what you feel, it's what you feel.
But it's what I feel, right?
Yeah.
I genuinely feel privileged that you can use technology to change people's lives, that you can ensure people can have access to connectivity that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to, or that you can help businesses modernise and streamline and improve their cash flow and not go out of business. So you genuinely lose sight of that when you're doing your jobs, right? Because your day-to-day comes up. But that was the thing that really drove me, like just a passionate and proud New Zealander and Southlander first and foremost. And so I think it was probably the only time that I defied Simon's advice, because normally it's 100% right.
So mentors have always been important to you? Like, say, Ian and
Hugely.
Simon? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, right? My mentors, my grandmother, my mum, my wife, my daughter, my sons, and then Simon, Chris Quinn, who was my boss at Telecom, he's now at Foodstuffs, amazing mentor. Ian Sutcliffe at McDonald's, Rick Ellis, Alan Gordy, who hired me. But, there's loads of people in my life who have been father figures in a lot of way to me when you don't have a father. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Now, I've got a question for you, which I'll give to you. You might not want to answer, which is what next? I've got a few other questions about other things, but if you don't feel comfortable answering that's fine. But I'll just take Monty out for a week, so there might be some trouble.
On the other hand, his dog provides a great source of comfort and security. That combination of new lung power is hard on the neighbors.
So I've got a few questions from that people have asked me to ask you, though many of them may already have been answered. But you've had an incredibly successful career, and you now have a really big and important job. How long have you been at Vodafone?
2.5 years.
2.5 years, which you seem to be doing, incredibly well at. What ambitions are there left for you?
If I go back to what I said, Rach said, like, what's the
end goal?
The end goal, and you go again. It's an anchor on. I just love this country, love Southland. Yeah, I know it sounds, but it's how I feel. So I have talked about politics.
I was gonna,
yeah. So the thing that makes me tentative about doing that is the two things actually. One, the cost on your family.
Which I think is such a holds back so many people and means that we don't get the politicians that we could do with, because they just don't want to necessarily go through that shit.
To subject their family to it, right? Because you think about being a politician and your children being 14 or 15 at school, and shit, it's tough enough as it is with social media and that dynamic, let alone your mum or dad being a politician.
Yeah.
And so that's the number one.
Yeah.
And it's a massive burden on you as well. Like I reckon politicians are sacrificing their family for their country, which I think is incredible. And I know they wouldn't see it that way, but you have to make a choice, and you genuinely can't say that you spend less time with your family if you were a politician.
I think it depends on the politician. I think the motivations behind it, sometimes they're selfless, but sometimes they're egotistical and
maybe
selfish.
they are, but they shouldn't be in politics in that.
Well, the problem with politics is that it attracts people who shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, I agree.
And the people generally, I think we've got. Not getting the current Prime Minister, but I think she's doing a pretty good job. But often the people who end up in that position are not ideally suited to be in that position. Which, dare I ask, which party should you ever get more than tempted to?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about me is like
independent.
Yeah, like I'm centre left and centre right. I agree with I voted. I would say for most parties over the time that I've been
course of your life,
course of my life.
Same.
So I couldn't give you a clear answer on that. The only thing I would say is that I would be, if I was going to go into politics, it would be with either Labour or a National, a big party.
Yeah.
Just because I would want to go on there to make change, and I think you need the scale to create policy.
Yeah. Being
on the side, I would struggle with that.
I think that would be really interesting, but hey, that's your call.
Yeah. So who knows? Who knows? It's very unlikely, again, because of the family situation. And I think there's also an argument to suggest, back to my first point around how we've managed to make the move from Spark to Vodafone, is I think businesses have a privileged position to make massive positive change in the countries they operate in if they choose to. And that's a pretty privileged position to be in.
Yes. The motivations behind companies are...
I agree.
Generally...
Commercially driven. No, without a doubt. Yeah. Shareholder driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, if you get your numbers, then it gives you more freedom, I reckon. Yeah,
but it comes down to... It comes down to the CEO.
It comes from the CEO, but also my chair, Marco, who's the CEO of Morrison & Co. and Invercargill.
Yeah.
For a private equity investor who has been massively successful, you would not find a more passionate New Zealander, more humble person who cares more deeply about this people in this country. And I think he's looking for enduring, long-term, next-generational benefits.
Yeah.
So that's why I think not all private equity is the same. My experience of Brookfield and Invercargill has only been extremely positive. They are long-term investors. They invest in essential services in the countries they operate in, and they back them and they fund them.
Okay, I'm willing to
be open-minded.
I'm more than willing to be open-minded. I'm a believer in grey.
So am I. If you can look at my hair.
Well, it's that. There's too much black and white.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to most things. So I will accept your proposition that not all private equity is evil.
Yes.
Now, a question that I'd like to ask, it's kind of my personal one, is how do you think you've done no tertiary education?
No. Didn't go to uni.
And how do you think your life and your career would have changed had you done that? Would it put you back, your whole career back 3 years, or would it possibly have advanced you even faster?
I don't think I'd be in the role I am now if I had of. Well, first of all, I'm not sure you go to be from being a teacher to CEO of Vodafone New Zealand. It would be an odd path because my first
Because you would have done teacher training.
intention was to go to teachers training college.
Yeah.
But a CEO is a bit of a teacher. It's a bit of a coach, etc. So in the DNA of it, that's your job. I don't know, but I don't have a you talk about grey.
Yeah.
You probably won't find, my wife's not a doctor, but she's got a master in law from Harvard.
Yeah.
She graduated top in her class.
Yeah.
Extremely qualified.
Yeah.
Me, no university, but I've got massive work experience. So I think there's an argument either way: 4 years of university or 4 years of work experience, which is better. I think it comes down to the individual. I think I have been lucky though that without a tertiary education, I have had people like Ian and Rick and Alan and Chris and Simon and Marco that have backed me along the way and have gone, actually, actions speak louder than qualifications. And so your track history of achievement, your track history of taking credit for your team's achievement means we'll give you another crack.
Yeah, once you've gone in a way to your career, your a tertiary experience or lack of it, whatever, becomes less and less important. But as it starts out, then...
Yeah, I had a real hang-up on it, actually. When I was at TVNZ, I was really worried. I said to Rach, do you think I'd need to do a master's?
MBA or something.
Yeah, an MBA on the side. And I talked to Rick about it, and Rick, TVNZ, funded me to go and do a business course at Harvard. Yeah. And so I went across there and did an advanced management course at Harvard, and I learned a lot with, models, etc., that you can apply to business, etc. But the thing that really dawned on me is when I got there, I had this inferiority complex that I would be out of my depth, and I wasn't.
Yes. And
actually I could contribute because I had life experience. Yeah. I could genuinely say what it was like to, wastage in a McDonald's restaurant, or how important the margin was to an owner-operator, or whatever. So, yeah, I think there's an argument both ways. Now, my wife and I will encourage our children to go to university. Yeah. We think it's a great social opportunity for them. You build great relationships. I think I would probably have more structure than I do now. Rachel's very structured and has a solid foundation. I'm least path of resistance. How fast can we get there? And sometimes the plate can come crashing on the ground because of that. But I don't think it's whatever's right for the individual, in my opinion. Yeah,
but you don't know.
No.
At that time when you're making that decision.
No.
Because so if at that age, whatever, 18, 19, you've gone, right, I'm gonna go to teacher training college, and right now you'd be a forward thinking principal of a progressive school.
And be bloody delighted.
And if I hadn't gone to university, God knows where I'd be. I certainly wouldn't be CEO of Vodafone, but literally, I don't like to think about it because for me, it gave me 3 years to grow up in.
Yeah,
to grow up in, to think about things and have a look at. Okay, you're not working, but you're having a look at life in a more theoretical sense, I guess. Let's not get too philosophical. But I think that's really interesting. But as you say, for your kids, you'll go. I think it's a good idea for you to go to college. Yeah,
because it gives you an opportunity to find yourself a bit more. It gives you some structure to your learning. You build really strong relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to run through some questions here. What advice would you give to people who wanted to be a CEO? Is a CEO something that, I suppose it is, people that go, leave school. What do you want to do? Entrepreneur is what everyone wants to do.
Yeah, I think so as well. I don't know if people want to be a CEO anymore, and especially in big organisations. I think the best part in a big organisation isn't the CEO. It's probably one or two layers down where you've got the remit and the budget. It's probably that adult marketing manager at McDonald's. That's the best position to be in. That's where you get to do the cool shit.
Okay, kids, adult marketing manager McDonald's. Andrew said to me today, Elon Musk's satellites. Starlink. Is that a challenge or likely to be?
No, I love
challenge?
it because the first community groups that it will solve connectivity issues for are the rural community. And I think that's bloody brilliant.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm a member of Farmside.
Yes, which is an important division of Vodafone.
Yeah. Okay, listener, Farmside is broadband for people who basically don't have any cable connectivity. It's a reasonable way to supply it. So when it's more expensive, when it's working, it's great. When it's not working,
No, which is the tough thing, right? And connectivity has become such an essential service nowadays. Doesn't matter where you're living, you need it.
It's massive. A bit late into the day, I'll just explain how this chat actually came about. Jason sent an email to all Vodafone members, or an email from Vodafone, which Jason wrote a part of, which was, if you have any comments or questions, then send them to me directly. And being a mildly cynical marketing individual with a lot of time on his hands these days, I thought, okay, I've got a question. Let's see what happens. And I sent it off, and I got a reply pretty promptly. It's a boring technical issue about Vodafone bills, which hasn't been solved, but there is an acknowledgement that it is an issue, and hopefully it will be solved. And whilst I had Jason's attention, I said, will you come on the podcast? And he said yes. So
I send that email every quarter, and I get about 500 emails back from our customers.
Yeah.
And I respond to every single one.
Yeah.
And the team helps me fix them. And not all of them can be fixed. Like you've said, your problem is a result of legacy technology, which needs to be modernised, which is being modernised, but will take some time. So it's not a quick fix, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it has been attended to.
Yes.
You're a cricket fan as well as rugby.
I'm sports mad. I played soccer on Saturday mornings, rugby Saturday afternoons, league on Sundays in the winter, touch rugby and cricket in the summer. Again, when you're in Invercargill, you'd be squash, tennis, badminton, lawn bowls, touch rugby, like everything you can get your hands on. So I love my sport.
The Cricket World Cup when it was over here.
Yeah, I remember Grant Elliott hitting the six at Eden Park to...
You were there?
Yep.
I was there. I go to a lot of sport. I've watched sport all over the world, and that was the best game I've ever seen.
I agree. Dale Steyn, 2 balls to go, hit a 6. Probably one of the happiest moments of my sporting life.
Yeah. Incredible. It was incredible.
And then how disappointing was the final? McCullum...
Yeah,
clean bowled.
I noticed you shared that. Thing because it was the final's over in what was that? The first ball of the innings.
I think it might have been.
It was that was it. Bang,
I know.
Game over. But that we'll always have that semi.
Yes.
And then the Cricket World Cup final at Lords.
God.
Because people think I'm
seriously,
I'm a plum that I was supporting England. I was supporting New Zealand. I was up at 3:00 in the morning.
Trent Boult stepping on the boundary. The ball ricocheting off Stokes' bat. Seriously, come on. I don't know. If you didn't believe in God before then, you probably had to after that. Someone was on England's side.
But which would have been better? New Zealand to have won that, or with the most boring World Cup final ever, and everybody going, bloody Kiwis didn't deserve it because they scraped through. They played in some incredible games in that.
Yeah.
Or that, which will go down as one of the most incredible finishes to a game of cricket ever. And we came out on the wrong side
I
of
know.
it. But
I think, so I agree with you. I still think the best end would have been, I thought Martin Guptill deserved to win it for them. He had a tough time. He's a premier batsman. He came in the whatever they call it, the final over or the super over or whatever it was. I don't know. It was harsh.
It was quite extraordinary. Sorry, non-cricket fans. I got a question from Mark Lorrigan.
Classic. Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
not the term I'd use, but he'd like to know what your favourite Happy Meal toy was. Which is,
Of course he would.
yeah, so probably don't answer that.
Don't ask the adult marketing
Caroline
manager.
wants to know how you made a jump from marketing to business more broadly. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's that may have been answered in the course of the whole chat, but it's something I joined the Institute of Directors because I thought it would be useful. Back in the days when I was running, or at least co-running an agency, and they don't teach any marketing. So you get, right, you're going to be a director, you need to learn about governance and this and that. There is no marketing. And I actually, sent them a note, complained about it.
I think you'll see more CEOs coming from a marketing background and from a creative background because very customer centric.
Yeah.
No matter what business you're in nowadays, there's someone doing something similar to you, and so it's about really understanding the customer, differentiating. I don't know.
But do they have the respect of the CEO and the chairman?
Well, I think it depends on. It depends
on
on
the
what
business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Depends on the business. I would like McDonald's, 100%. A lot of MDs or CEOs come through McDonald's because it's a very sales and marketing led business. If you want to be a CEO, then you have to take a role in and you're a marketer, you have to take a role in an organization where marketing is genuinely seen as a creative and commercial engine room.
Yes.
In the organization. If it's just seen as the ads, it's not right.
It isn't, but I guess it is. Martin Brown wants to know what mobile plan you're on.
I'm on the endless $60 plan, and I've got three companion plans now. So my wife, my son Sam, and my son William. My daughter does not have a phone yet.
Is that okay, Brownie? The answer there. Dave King.
Dave King.
You know Dave?
Yeah, I do know Dave. He's a great guy too.
Dave wants to know what the best restaurant in Invercargill is.
Well, Lone Star is my go-to because of the ribs, a dozen ribs. I just love
Do you love
Lone
ribs?
Star. Oh, love ribs.
We got some ribs last night at that place in Grey Lynn that does ribs and nothing else. You have to try it. It's called Cole, Cole.
Is it awesome?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Do it.
But if you are in Invercargill, the best place to go is you have to go to the Copper Kettle. You have to buy cheese rolls, and you have to buy an ice cream milkshake with the longest, giraffe on the side of it. So that's the best thing. You have to go and buy cheese rolls and a milkshake.
I have actually been in Invercargill, and I could have done with that advice then. Ben says, you've made direct customer contacting and engagement a hallmark of your style, as we talked about. In agencies, we always talk about being close to the customer. Do you think we deliver? What have you learned about how clients and agencies should be engaging with their consumers?
Going back to that point where I think the best agencies genuinely need to be own the outcome with the client. Sometimes I feel like the two removed from the commercial results that you're trying to achieve. It's why I said, I struggled with agency side because I felt like you weren't close enough to the action. It kind of stopped at one point in time. So,
as a client, how do you differentiate between agencies?
Creativity is the first thing.
Yeah.
So you want to see who has a track record of being able to identify a unique insight that differentiates you from the competition.
Yeah.
And then you execute it brilliantly creatively. In the telco industry, two examples come to mind. One locally, the 2 Degrees launch, I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
You've been bloody ripped off for years, and we're here to change it. I thought that was bloody great.
This is the TBWA with Rhys Darby.
I thought that was just outstanding. And then O2 in the UK. I love the fact that O2 and the DNA is they picked up that connectivity is essential for life. And what is essential for life? Oxygen.
Yeah.
Therefore, everything that they did in terms of their go-to-market was about, essential connectivity because we are essential for life. I just love that it was in everything they did. So anyway,
when an agency is presenting to you, and it may not happen so much these days,
Yeah.
but in the past, when they go, here's our cred stake, and they go through it, at what point does it become interesting?
when I'm nervous, when I'm going, holy shit, like really? Do you think we could really do that?
So that's the work. That's and there is. It's funny that for good marketers and creative directors, I think that bit that makes you, because as a creative director, you actually have the same thing. You have teams coming in to present work, and most of it, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
But that bit where you sit up on your chair and go,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
But before you get to that stage, in terms of agency creds, most agencies, I believe, say the same thing about themselves. They say that we do this, and it's kind of like, yeah, ho hum, yep, okay. Tell me something I don't know. Tell me something different from what other agencies do.
So in that instance, I'd look at the team.
Yeah,
One of the best teams I've seen was James, Brent Smart, and Wertho at the
Glenzo.
planning. Yeah, at Glenzo. So you had the suit, the planner, and the ECD in harmony.
Yeah.
So I'd be looking for that team dynamic. That was pretty incredible to be a part of, to be honest.
But did you know them individually beforehand?
No.
So is it just by reputation?
Well, you hear about them, like Wertho,
Yeah.
incredible.
Were they? Oh, Nick. Yeah. Yeah.
So you hear about them, reputation, but then you see them in action, and then you see the dynamic between them.
Yeah.
And they're finishing each other's sentences, and there's no
You're
arrogance.
going to say there's no ego, but they're just very good at hiding it.
Well, you have to have an ego, right?
Yeah.
But they do a brilliant job of hiding it.
Hello?
Here we go, from Greg. Vodafone is strongly rumoured to have had a bit of a poor culture for a while in terms of mental health and feelings of safety and efficacy.
Yep.
What have you learned about how to reset a company's culture?
My biggest challenge coming into Vodafone,
Yeah.
like good people before me, but there was a bit of a culture of fear of failure, fear of admitting that your program was off track. And that meant that a lot of things that were going wrong in the business were hidden.
Yeah.
And so how do you unlock that? You have to start by making mistakes and owning up to them yourself and being open and transparent and laughing about it. You have to celebrate people pushing the boundaries and it not working out and going, that's okay. But also when someone's a complete fool and does something that was just idiotic and it's have a massive impact on a customer, still show that it's not good enough and we won't put up with it. It's getting that balance right. It's the cultural challenge, as I said, 2.5 years into it. The first year was the ownership change. So I really feel like I've had 1.5 years in the seat to get my head around it. And I'm still trying to unlock the capability within the organisation that I know is there and make them as bold and brave and risk-taking as they should be. And still a long way to go. But it starts with me and it starts with my own leadership team. And we've still got a long way to go as well.
That's it.
Awesome. That last question is like, it's a whole podcast in itself on culture. I think I said to you before we started, there's my mate Clive, who's now the CEO of Les Mills. We used to work together at Spark. He's an awesome guy. He sent me Toto Wolff podcast on empathy over engineering, which was basically about that. You'd think that winning Formula One, I think they won 7 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And they ask him how, expecting the answer to be about technology and that those,
Had a faster car.
Yeah. But it's all about people.
Yeah. And from my own point of view, when we started Barnes, Capman, Friends, the number one priority for me, for the agency, was that it was a place that I liked going to work at.
What a great call.
And that in a sense, it's a very selfish call, but it's I kind of hoping that if it's somewhere that I like going to work, that everyone else does, and that was more. This is how you spend most of your waking life, is at work. So make it somewhere that you want to be.
And how quickly it can change when you put just one bad person into that environment, right? It can make a massive difference.
It does. On a couple of occasions that I've been aware of, that person, partly due to things that we have done, has turned around, and that is incredibly Rewarding, yeah.
I like that. That's a much. Again, that thing I just listened to, they said it's better to have a hole in your organisation than an asshole. But yours is a much more positive spin, which is how rewarding it is to turn that person around. That's cool.
Yeah, that was. Jason, thank you so much. It's been great chatting. Thank you for being so open, and best of luck with whatever you got up to in the future. We'll be watching with interest.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're listening to Truth and Soul.
Okay, thank you. That's all we've got time for now, as you'll no doubt be relieved to hear. On the off chance that you like what you're hearing in the podcast and want to hear some more, please force your friends to have a listen too. And if you feel the need to share that, drop me a line at paul@truthandsoul.co.nz. If you're new to the podcast, make sure you have a listen to the back episodes. There's not a dud one there. Well, I don't think so anyway, although, of course, I may be biased. If you don't like any of them, after you've listened, drop Jonathan at Franklin Road a line and tell him what I'm doing wrong. He always does. In the meantime, thanks to the good folk at Franklin Road Studios who do the actual work for the podcast. Stefan, Shane, Sydney, Vanessa, James, and, of course, Jonathan. Subscribe for further podcasts. It's all free. And now here's some wonderful music.
On the farewell drive, we found 100 ways that our hands fit together. Centrifugal force pulls us apart as we spin. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn. And it's at times like these that we understand our Father's fascination with dendrology. The family tree is losing its leaves. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn, the anxious toss and turn.